What's up everyone and welcome back to my channel. JR Santos Diaz here, and I'm a startup founder and previously worked at Google and a Google-backed startup. My last video touched on 5 quick questions to ask yourself before you build your startup. For this video, we'll go through 3 tips and a practical guide to understand who is your customer and to design for what your customer actually wants. I know you may be tempted to get started, but you want to make sure that you do your research, interview potential customers, and really fully set the foundation before you waste any time. Building companies are tough, and I wanted to make sure that I can help and make sure as you identify who is your customer, what to build for, and essentially what you're going to do to validate and test this hypothesis, you have all the tools necessary to get started. And so let's get started with the 3 tips, starting with number 1. Talk to potential customers. I know this sounds simple, but receiving and iterating on feedback is super invaluable. As Steve Blank would say, get outside the building. Talk to customers and discover as much as you can about your space so you can allow yourself to fully shape your business for success. Making sure that you get outside the building again will allow you to not really jump to assumptions, waste the time, build for something that you don't actually need to build for. And so making sure you take that time to actually learn around you, discover, and it allows you to really shape again what you're building as a foundation. Tip number 2, ask questions to identify your ideal customer profile. Whether if you're a B2C, business to consumer, or B2B, business to business company, you need to make sure you ask the right questions and really identify who your target customer is. For example, one of my favorite productivity apps is Calendly, and their mission statement is to help connect millions of people around the world and to provide a product that takes work out of scheduling so customers can get more done. And if we really think about that mission statement and really think about how do they provide value and identify their ideal customer profile, they're looking for busy people in the market who they can really take away that scheduling piece. And so for me, as I build my startup, it's been super invaluable. And as you think about this and how it applies to your business, think about who your ideal customer profile is. For Calendly, it's people like me, people who are busy, who hate scheduling, and so making that easier. And so for you, whether if you have a B2B or B2C company, make sure that you can really think about as you interview and as you engage in interviews, who is that person you want to learn from and discover as much as you can about the market, their pain points, and what they actually want from a product. Tip number 3, engage in customer development. What is customer development? Customer development is a formal process of testing your hypothesis. This is just a professional way of saying you're talking to potential customers. When you build and try to sell a product before you test and learn, you waste an enormous amount of time, money, and resources. One recent B2C company example of this is Quibi. Quibi was a platform that used short video content, and while the pandemic is part of the reason why they failed, one area that they potentially could have improved upon was better understanding why the market, or what the market and what users actually wanted. If Quibi took the time to effectively understand why do users need this app, they could have actually pivoted and actually still be around today. When you think about a very competitive space in entertainment, you think about YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, and you think about why people use these types of apps, you're gonna have to really fully understand what can you do different. What do people want? What is the gap in the market? What is that inefficiency? And so for Quibi, frankly, they fell short to actually discover what they needed in the market to actually make them even more valuable or valuable in the first place to really be a sustainable business. So now that we have the 3 tips and we understand how to set that foundation and trying to understand who our customers actually are, we're gonna actually go now through a practical guide so you can ask the right questions, have the right structure to going through an interview process to see what you can really glean from potential customers. So let's go to the practical guide. Notion is one of my favorite productivity apps that I use both for my professional and personal life, whether if I'm tracking my workout goals, creating YouTube content, using it for my startup to document all my materials. But for today, I actually included a template below that you're gonna be able to use to leverage while you interview potential customers. Again, this entire process is to really unlock who is your ideal customer profile, see some unknowns, validate any of your hypotheses, really test out what you believe in. And so this will really unlock opportunities to really refine your strategy, whether that's for your product, pricing, or whatever that may be for your business. So let's take a look at what I've included here. So as a customer development guide, what I like to do is really understand the person a little bit more. So you can include the person's name, date, age, gender, but it's really up to you to modify that accordingly. So you can remove, include more, but it really depends on what you're comfortable with and really understanding who that customer is. As you dig deeper and start to ask some other questions, for both 1A and for 1B, I tend to lead these interviews with more personal questions to start. I think interviews in general are very awkward. So to get a better sense of the person, get them to speak a little bit more freely and openly, I like to ask them more about their personal life so they really are in the mood to share. So maybe one question you can ask, so feel free to update this accordingly on 1A, you can ask, what do you do for work? So feel free to update that. If you need another question, so for 1B to get them in that mood again and to feel more comfortable, maybe you can ask, what do you love most about your job? Feel free to take notes and document it because it really will open up their mood and how they are so you can calibrate accordingly for your interview. As we move on, if you look at 2A, I like to then transition to some questions that are going to be really more geared for your business. So for example, if we're looking at an education app and this is going to be the business you want to build, maybe one question you can ask to get a baseline of this customer is, how many languages do you speak? So feel free to update that accordingly, but make it to modify your business so it's best suited and it's going to be relevant as you understand your customers. Going on and looking at 2B, so another interview driving question, what you can say here is, do you see value in learning languages? So it gives you a sense of, does this person actually prioritize it? Is it important to them? How important it is? But feel free to take note. And really here, you don't really have to care much about what they say. And sure, you want to document it, but it's more so the attitude, the behavior, really the energy that you get from when they actually speak. So that gives you a sense of kind of where they are for where they're at for the market. And so moving on, if you look to dig deeper question here, so for number 3, you want to ask maybe here, and so again with the example of education, you can describe and ask them, can you describe your level of motivation to learn another language? So that really opens up the conversation to say, hey, is this something that I want to prioritize? Are there opportunities that I can focus on? Is there something in the market that doesn't touch on that? So for example, there's Duolingo, Rosetta Stone, maybe something's too expensive, maybe it's not as easy to really access, the materials are not as good. It gives you an opportunity to understand what you as a company can really build upon to address this potential customer. So moving on, if I look to now to dig deeper, I'm not sure if you read the Lean Startup by Eric Ries. If you haven't, highly recommend it, but he addresses the 5 whys. So as you ask questions, as you engage in this discovery method, you need to make sure you ask why. So for example, you learn opportunities that a customer says, in the market, maybe learning a language is not easy, materials are not as fluid, and so really ask why. So if they maybe mention a feature or something that really comes up that goes to mind, you need to make sure that this conversation is going to be adaptive so you can ask questions. You may not have to ask 5 whys, but again, that's just what Eric Ries recommends. And so for this guide, I put this here as a reminder. So feel free to update this question. If during this question more come up, feel free to really expand upon to dig deeper to understand the market and to understand what you're trying to discover that can really unlock more potential and opportunities. And the way I like to end my interviews are really asking out of the box prompts. So for example, again, for this example, maybe I can say, if English wasn't available tomorrow to communicate with the broader public, what language would you learn? So it really puts them into a unique angle to look at this problem statement or to look at the market in a different lens. So maybe someone will say, they'll learn Mandarin because there's just a lot of people in the market that you would be able to communicate. Maybe there's large business opportunities, but for your business, make sure you can think of out-of-the-box questions that really spark innovation, make them think outside the box. But again, it really opens up and gives you an opportunity to look at this angle and to look at this opportunity in a different angle. So Again, I also included a note section at the end, so throughout the conversation, if there's stuff that really don't fit into any of the columns, feel free to add it accordingly. But again, this is the structure and the framework to use to really facilitate your interviewing process. Feel free to structure accordingly, but this should get you started. So to recap, we walked through the customer development process. We shared a practical guide and also included 3 tips so you have the structure and the foundation to pursue your interviewing process. If you like this video, please hit subscribe and like below. Thank you so much, everyone. Talk soon.